In today's lesson, we're going to hear and discuss the rest of our nonfiction book, and we're also going to continue wondering about our topic. I would like you to use the turn and talk strategy to discuss what you have learned about chameleons from the first part of the story. Take a moment and hit the pause button, and when you're ready to come back, hit play to hear the rest of our story. Chameleons Are Cool by Martin Jenkins, and it's illustrated by Sue Shields. This is where we stopped yesterday. Their mouths are pretty odd too. They turn down at the corners, which is why chameleons always look grumpy. Actually, they don't just look grumpy, they are grumpy. So if two chameleons bump into each other, things can get pretty lively, and lively means exciting. Things can get pretty lively. There's lots of puffing and hissing, and sometimes there's a real fight. And that's when chameleons do what they're most famous for. They change color. And this says a chameleon will only fight with the same kind of chameleon as itself. Lots of people think chameleons change color to match their surroundings. They don't. They change color when they're angry or when they're too cold or too hot or when they're sick. And there are some sorts of chameleons that hardly change color at all. As a rule, though, chameleons don't bump into one another all that often. I suppose it wouldn't be fair to call them lazy, but they certainly don't move any more than they have to. And when they do, it's almost always incredibly slowly. And this says a chameleon's feet are shaped like pincers for holding onto branches tightly. And there's the picture that matches. Sometimes they stop completely in mid-step as if they've forgotten what they're supposed to be doing. But if you look closely, you'll see that they're actually carefully peering about. And peering means looking. They're carefully peering about. Now, peering about is something chameleons are rather good at. That's because their eyes can move separately from each other, unlike our eyes, which always move together. This says most of a chameleon's eye is covered in skin like the rest of its body. There is a tiny peephole in the middle of the chameleon's eye that sees through. So while one eye is looking back over the chameleon's shoulder, the other one is scanning, and scanning means looking carefully. So the other one is scanning the branches ahead. As soon as it spots something tasty, the chameleon fixes both eyes on its prey and begins to creep forward and move even more slowly than usual. Then it opens its mouth just a crack and this says, chameleons feed on all sorts of creepy crawlies. The big ones also eat small birds, mice, and even other chameleons. Out shoots this amazing long tongue with a sticky tip at the end, like a piece of well-chewed gum. Then the tongue flies back, and there's a lot of chomping, and chomping means take big, noisy bites. There's a lot of chomping and chewing and perhaps a few bites of insect leg fluttering to the ground. And after the chameleon just sits there for an hour or two, doing nothing very much at all, looking quite exhausted and still grumpy after all that work. So I want you to take a moment and think about, what did you learn about chameleons? And the second question is, how do they catch their prey? So pause the video and use the turn and talk strategy to discuss, what did you learn about chameleons and how did they catch their prey? and then hit the play button when you're ready. This says, most lizards gulp their food down without chewing it, but chameleons grind everything up thoroughly, and grind means to chew. So they chew everything thoroughly. And there you have it. How could you possibly resist a pocket-sized, bad-tempered, color-changing, swiveled-eyed, snail-paced, long-tongued snapshooter? If chameleons aren't cool, then I don't know what is. So I have two more questions. So what are some reasons the author gives for why chameleons are cool is the first question. And you can use the turn and talk strategy for that. And the second question is, what was the most surprising or interesting thing you learned about chameleons? So I'm going to say those questions one last time. What are some reasons the author gives for why chameleons are cool? The second question, what was the most surprising or interesting thing you learned about chameleons? I hope you liked the story. Chameleons are cool.